All right, so the next system for lab is our digestive system, and this system has a lot of histology. There's about 3 pages worth of terms, and so we're going to break this up into maybe 2 or 3 different little video clips to help make sense of all these terms. This first one here is going to focus on the mouth, in particular some of the features of the tongue, as well as then the salivary glands that help with this process. And so here, this slide out of a textbook is just used to show these 4 different papillae, or the bumps that we have on the surface of our tongue. I'll show you individual slides of each one of these, but very quickly, this first one up here on the top left, this is going to be the filiform. These you'll notice are all over our tongue. These are the ones that give it the kind of the rough appearance. Second, the one we'll look at are these fungiform, and that name suggests they come and look like little mushrooms. So these are the fungiform papillae, and these will have taste buds, which the first ones do not, but they're going to have this dome-like appearance. The third one that we'll look at are these foliate, and these, although this figure doesn't suggest so much, they have this nice columnar shape, and these are going to have these taste buds along the lateral surface. And then the last one we'll take a look at are the valate, and these are much larger. You can see from this diagram here, they're much larger papillae, and these are the ones that have these very deep pits that are lined with taste buds. Most of our taste buds are associated with these valate papillae. And so if we look at these individually, here is the first one. This is going to be the filiform. And this is the one I mentioned is really all over our tongue and provides that nice texture, that roughness. All of these are going to have a stratified squamous ET. And so here you can see it kind of resembles the skin in some ways. This is the stratified layer. These filiform actually have a keratinized. And so you're going to find that in this case, this roughened outer exterior is due to this keratinized stratified squamous. Down below, you're going to find some of the other layers, in particular, some of the skeletal muscle that we associate with our tongue. And so the filiform, they tend to be pretty easy. They have these very irregular, almost tall, sometimes they look sharp, almost like claws they do here, but it's the stratified squamous with this nice keratinized outer layer that gives them that nice rough appearance. The second one that I mentioned, these are the fungiform. And as I mentioned, these have that kind of dome-shaped or mushroom-shaped surface. Right? And you'll notice here that there's not a very deep pit on either side. And so this we're going to be comparing to the valate here in a moment. But the ones that have this kind of nice, small, dome-shaped surface, these are going to be the fungiform. And these will have taste buds. You'll often see a little taste buds here on the surface, but we'll be able to look at some of the other ones here in a moment that have better taste buds. So the ones that have this dome-like appearance, these are the fungiform papillae. The third ones, these were those foliate. And as I mentioned, these have this kind of nice columnar shape, and this figure really highlights the symmetry, right? So you can really see that this one, if you were to run a line right down the middle of it, the 2 halves would look almost identical. And so this tends to be a very good slide showing these characteristics, these tall columnar papillae. These are actually not very common on the human tongue, but we have some slides here of some other organisms. These also have really nice examples of the taste buds on the side. So these spherical, lighter regions here, these are our taste buds. And these taste buds have these little pores that open up to the outside. Now, if we look closely at these taste buds, here we can see these taste buds, again, lining the lateral surface of this papilla. And you can see here, this is outside. This is where the saliva, the liquid on our tongue would be. And this helps actually dissolve the food particles. This is what allows us to taste. And so those food particles will dissolve in that saliva, which will then allow these taste buds. And these taste buds have 2 cell types. Now, you're not asked to distinguish them, but you should know them. There's the supporting cells and the gustatory cells. And so in here you can see some lighter cells and some darker cells. Again, you don't have to tell them apart, but just know that these taste buds are composed of these supporting cells as well as then the receptors or the gustatory cells. And these foliate will have quite a few taste buds in addition to the fungiform. The last type of papillae we have for you to look at are these valate or circumvallate papillae. And these are those large ones along the back surface of the tongue. And you'll notice here, these have really deep pits around them. So unlike the fungiform that had the dome shape, these have the dome shape, but they have these really, really deep pits that will then surround each one of these papilla. These are going to then be lined with a lot of taste buds along those lateral surfaces here. So at this magnification, we can see quite a few taste buds, again, exposed to the surface area. The other thing that is actually more of a defining characteristic for these valate will be the glands associated with them. And so you can see them on the previous slide, but this one's a little bit better just because of the stain. So here's this large valate papilla. You can see the taste buds here, these little spherical, lighter spaced regions. But if you look down below within the actual tongue itself, you'll see the skeletal muscle. again, the muscle that makes up majority of our tongue. But then you'll also see these glands. And so this area here, and then there's these dark purple ones. There's actually two types of salivary glands associated with our tongue. So again, we have these dark purple ones, and then we have these kind of lighter pink ones. Now, if we look at a higher magnification, you can really see that, in fact, this tissue here, which I was pointing out earlier, this is different than the muscle tissue surrounding it. So these are intrinsic salivary glands. Intrinsic meaning that they're part of the tongue itself. They're not a separate gland. So this is just within the tongue tissue itself, surrounded by all this skeletal muscle, are these two intrinsic salivary glands. The first one here, these are the serous glands. And so these are the ones that are going to be secreting kind of the enzyme or protein-rich saliva. And so because of that, they have a lot of protein-filled granules, they have a lot of ribosomes, and they have this then granular appearance. And so here you can see that these cells that make up this gland are going to have that kind of granular appearance that we associate with protein-producing cells. So these are the serous, or the intrinsic serous glands of the tongue, and they're associated with then those pits of those valate papillae. The other type of gland, which is conveniently on the left side of this field of view, these are the intrinsic mucus glands. And so these glands produce this mucus-rich material. And what that looks like in then the slide preparation are these really large, almost frothy, empty-looking cells, right? The nuclei get pushed to the very edge. And the reason for that is these would be filled with very large vesicles filled with this mucus-like material. And when these slides are prepared, a lot of those vesicles are removed or dissolve out. And so we have these very large, again, almost frothy looking cells. They happen to be dark purple in this field of view just because of the stain, but don't always rely on that. The big, frothy, almost smooth cytoplasm cells, those are the mucus glands, whereas the kind of the granular, the ones that have the very prominent nucleus, these are the serous glands. In addition to the four papillae and then these two intrinsic glands, we also have our three types of extrinsic salivary glands. So these are actual separate glands that contribute most of our saliva. So the intrinsic ones were within the tongue itself. These are the extrinsic ones. And there are three glands. There are the parotid glands. So these big ones out here just anterior to the ear, these are the parotid salivary glands. And then we have paired submandibular salivary glands. And then the last ones are the sublingual glands. These are the ones directly under our tongue. And so not only are you expected to know these from the gross anatomy, maybe on a wall, a model, the torso model, potentially at the prosection room, but you also should be able to distinguish these three salivary glands based on their histology. And if we look at this first one, this is the parotid gland. The thing to note about these three glands is the types of glands they have and the ratio of glands they have. So this one first, you'll notice that all of this tissue here, it's all the same, right? There's really only one type of gland within this parotid gland. And these are those serous glands. These are those ones that we just saw that have the very prominent nuclei. They have the granular appearance. These are those serous glands that are involved in producing the kind of the enzyme-rich, protein-rich component of our saliva. So the parotid glands really only have the serous glands. And so the slide that has just all serous glands, you should identify that as the parotid gland. The next one on our list, the submandibular glands. The submandibular glands are now going to have both types. They're going to have the serous glands as well as mucus glands, but they're mostly serous. And so whereas the parotid glands were all serous, the submandibular glands are mostly serous within a few mucus glands spaced throughout. And so if you look at this field of view, most of the darker stained regions here, these are those serous glands. Again, they have that kind of granular appearance because of those protein-rich vesicles. Most of the glandular tissue within this field of view would be that darker purple serous gland. Whereas you'll notice up here, there are a few of the lighter, kind of frothy looking glands. And these are the ones with the nuclei that are pushed to the very edge. Now the stain is actually opposite of what we saw earlier, so don't always rely on the stain here, but just notice the characteristics of the cells themselves. So here, again, the open, kind of empty looking cells, very large, frothy appearance, those are the mucus glands, whereas the darker stained, more granular appearance, these are going to be the serous glands. And within this field of view, most of the glands are going to be of that serous type, and that's going to be a characteristic of the submandibular glands. You can also see various ducts, and so you should also be able to identify that there are the ducts that help transport the glandular secretions to then the surface, or in this case, into the mouth. And so you can notice the ducts as well as then the glandular tissue, both mucus as well as serous. Whereas the last one here, this is going to be our third extrinsic salivary gland. This is the sublingual gland. And here you'll notice that most of the glandular tissue is going to be that kind of open, light, frothy mucus gland. Whereas if you look between, you see the darker stained serous glands. So if you take a look at this, you'll notice that most of the glands are of the mucus type, with then a smaller percentage of the serous type. And so these are the sublingual glands. Sublingual glands have mostly mucus, submandibular glands had mostly serous, and parotid glands had all serous. And so of these three glands, make sure you can recognize the ratio of types of glands. And then for the four papillae from the tongue, recognize the basic shapes of them, right? We have the very kind of sharp, rigid filiform. We have that mushroom kind of smooth surface fungiform. We have the more columnar shape, very symmetrical. Those are the foliate. And then we had the large spherical ones with the very deep pits, and those are the valate. And those are the ones that have the very prominent intrinsic serous and mucus glands associated with them.